Fine.
All right. So let me just introduce Bryan Mattimore, co-founder and chief idea guy of the Growth Engine Company, a 20-year-old innovation and creativity training agency based in Westport. In his marketing consulting career, Bryan has managed over 200 successful innovation projects, leading to over $3 billion in new sales for 1/3 of the Fortune 100 companies. There's more here. You can read it online. Bryan, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Doug. Hey, everybody. Good to see everybody. I know Mary, and I recognize some of your other names. Yeah, what I want to do today, I mean, a lot of our work has been with very large organizations, you know, the famous ones, the packaged goods guys, et cetera. But over the years, we've had to be resourceful and creative when we haven't had the budgets that we wanted to go research something and develop it. And so I'm going to share some of those tricks, and hopefully they'll be useful to you guys as we move forward. This is the background which you've already heard about, so I'll just flip through that. By the way, that book, 21 Days to a Big Idea, is a very good book. It's a book that Bob Dorff, who some of you may know, the lean innovation guy with Steve Blank. Bob asked me to create a course for his students at Columbia and also at Skolkovo University in Moscow. And anyway, so this was a result of that. And the process behind that for getting a big idea has been validated and shown to work with literally hundreds of students. So, and this is, you know, some of our clients, just some of them, there are a lot more. So what are we going to talk about tonight? I want to just lay the foundation for, you know, I'm an expert in ideation and innovation process. You know, I've written 3 books, and actually there are 2 more coming out, et cetera. So I spent my life trying to understand how people and really groups get, you know, breakthrough ideas, and specifically what are the techniques that will do that. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I'll spend a fair amount of time talking about this affordable research methodologies, qualitative and quantitative, and then very briefly on concept development, and then hopefully we'll have time for some questions. So that's what we're up to. I just need to quickly lay the foundation, because you know, it's amazing that even in corporate America, you know, sophisticated firms, you know, they still think they should go do brainstorming, which of course, you know, there was a study done at Yale in the late 50s. It was shown not to be particularly effective. And so that's why this term ideation has evolved, because ideation is a whole group of techniques that are effective. And what separates ideation from brainstorming, it can really be captured in one word, which is stimuli. You know, it's about triggering the brain in very different ways, different parts of the brain with different stimuli in order to make new connections. So, and we'll get into that, and you'll see some examples of that. By the way, the examples I've chosen have been are sort of packaged goods examples. There's a tool from Craftsman I'm going to mention here, but a lot of these, because they're kind of fun and they're easy to, I think they make good examples. But you know, we've certainly done this work with, you know, I mean, I'm a marketing and innovation instructor for Caltech, so with some, you know, high-tech firms certainly, and Eaton Corporation, Command, and et cetera. And so these technologies and thinking strategies are not limited to just packaged goods, for sure. So here we go. These are just some of the techniques we might use. There are dozens and dozens of these. We've invented a bunch of these that are now in the quote creativity literature. Some of the inventors in the room may know the TRIZ process. When TRIZ came to the US in the late 80s, I interviewed Valery Surikov for Success Magazine and sort of helped popularize that a little bit. And as you may know, there are 40 sort of principles behind TRIZ that can trigger ideas. I was 2 weeks ago, I was out in Idaho. I was working with a large drilling equipment manufacturer, and we were inventing new products with their customers. It was joint sessions with their customers, and so we used, one of the techniques we used was the TRIZ principle triggers, and so that was successful. By the way, if you want any more information on any of this stuff, feel free to call me or email me, and I'm happy to give you more information on this stuff. But you can see all the different, these are just some of the techniques we would use. And part of the contribution I think that we've made as an innovation agency to the field is which techniques have the greatest chance of working against different challenges. So, so what are areas for ideation? Certainly new products and new services, right? I mean, those are the obvious ones. Use these things to invent some new products. I'll share some examples. And then the second most popular is certainly marketing and advertising and PR and social media ideas. But, you know, leadership, sales, manufacturing, logistics, HR, we've done sessions in all these areas. So let me give you examples in new products. You know, I remember we did a session with Shearing Plow, and what are some joint venture possibilities, and how can we take our technologies and mash those up with other technologies to create new ventures. Same with Dun & Bradstreet, and this can be interesting when you have a recent acquisition. You know, the company's bought that company for a purpose, right? But there may be some unanticipated possibilities based on the core competencies of each company that could be mashed up to create new products and new services. And on and on and on. Again, if you want to take a note, and if there's anyone in particular that you want me to hit here, I'm happy to talk about it. But you know, patent licensing, we did work with 25 PhD scientists at Eaton Corporation on how to invent and protect new fuse box ideas. Obviously, marketing, advertising, and PR. This would be the second, you know, most common occurrence of use of these ideation processes. You know, advertising demonstrations. We were doing work for Procter & Gamble on how to, you know, create a convincing demo for an ad. You know, which is fun, right? Loyalty programs. We were working with Panera people, Panera Bread, to help them promote their loyalty program, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll mention global virtual ideation here in a second. By the way, this will feel a little bit like a fire hose. I apologize, but I'm sort of throwing out all these thought starters for you guys, and in the hope that it'll trigger a question of deep interest for you. Leadership, you know, vision, mission, and values creation. That's a creative act. We worked with Monster.com before they were sold in order to help them get their vision, mission, values together and straight, et cetera. IBM, we did a culture change project, et cetera, et cetera. The bigger point here is that these ideation techniques are all about coming up with new ideas, and you can apply them in all these different areas. Sales, for sure. My TEDx talk, which I have the link to at the end of this, and Doug, feel free to share these slides with everybody if they're interested, or you can contact me and I'll share them with you. And there are a whole bunch of resources, free resources I have. But the TEDx talk I gave was on using these techniques for increasing sales, and we helped an insurance company increase their sales 52% using a technique called problem redefinition. Manufacturing logistics, for sure. You know, we did 50 cost-cutting sessions around the country with Unilever, et cetera. So the point is that these techniques can be not just for new products, and for you guys, I mentioned them because you have a new product, but that, as you know, I don't want to call that the easy part, because it's not. But then you've got to market it and promote it and sell it and do all the rest. And so all these techniques could help you with that. I mentioned this because I did write an article on how to think about virtual ideation sessions, and that's the link to it. It was in Ambition magazine for 50,000 MBA students. But it's really, we pioneered how to do these things, ideation sessions virtually. And frankly, I was surprised that it worked. It worked really well. It really surprised me. I didn't think it would work, but it did work. And I can tell you more about that if you're interested. So what I wanted to do, I just wanted to hit a couple of techniques and show some real world examples, because I think that makes it fun. So certainly in these times, we've got some trend triggers. By the way, there are all these free trend services. You know, Trend Hunter is fantastic if you don't know it. we use those to often trigger our ideation sessions with specific new products from around the world that might trigger new ideas. Cassandra, Sparks and Honey, has a daily briefing of everything that's happening in the world. They monitor more than 18 feeds from around the world and create this hour-long briefing about what's happening. So just some of the trends in the world of food, portability, sustainability, clean label, healthy snacking, new exotic ingredients, and energy management, extra protein. So we had an assignment with CPAC. They're the second largest frozen fish food manufacturer in the nation behind Borton's. And this was a joint session with Kroger. By the way, if you can figure out a way to do a joint session with a customer, that's really powerful, right? Because you can invent products together, and when you do that, they're much more likely to ultimately take it. We did this with Walmart and Home Depot. We've done this with a lot of the big guys, CVS, et cetera. And it's amazing what kind of commitment you get from the buyers when they're part of the process. So anyway, so the triggers here, what the hell, what do you do with shrimp? And so we triggered with some of these trend triggers, and this led to that product, CPAC on the go. It's shrimp and cocktail sauce all in one. This is not, rocket science, but oh my gosh, when we did the qualitative research, the focus group on this, people were, this has never happened in my career. I'd say, well, how many of these would you buy in a month? And these are like $5 or $6 each. And people would take them for lunch or give them to the kids or whatever. And they were saying, oh yeah, I'd probably buy 8 of these a month, 10 of these a month, 12 of these a month. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we're somewhat of an expert on English muffins, and because we were their innovation agency, Thomas's, and if people buy 4 of those a year, they consider that a heavy user. So anyway, so the point is, it was really simple. We mashed up shrimp with these trends and got this extraordinary idea. And Kroger was part of the process, so they got a first shot at it. Here's another technique I wanted to share. It's called semantic intuition. It's a word combination technique. This is my favorite of all the new product development techniques. This one was invented by the guy has since passed, but it was in Battelle in Germany. And it's a word combination technique. So we had an assignment with Chips Ahoy. And by the way, in my opinion, it's harder to invent a new Chips Ahoy cookie or Oreo cookie than it is new features for an iPhone, right? Because you can go anywhere with an iPhone, but with an Oreo cookie, people have very strong feelings about what an Oreo cookie is or isn't. Same with the Chips Ahoy. So we use this word combination technique, semantic intuition it's called, terribly named, but that's all right. And it's columns of words. So and by the way, I don't even know if I said it, I apologize if I didn't. What makes ideation techniques different than brainstorming is one word, it's stimuli, right? It's triggering the brain with these different elements of stimuli. So how do we trigger the brain to invent a new cookie? So one is we did a whole bunch of desserts in kind of one column. Then another column, anybody think about what it could be? Certainly could be different ingredients that could be in there, candy canes. Not that these are mutually exclusive, but And then finally, the most important, well, this one was critical, it was forms and filled or layered. And so we mashed those up, brownie, dark chocolate filled, and we came up with brownie, dark chocolate and filled. And this led to the brownie filled Chips Ahoy cookie, which has now become it's become what's called a platform for them. Once the food scientists figured out how to put a layer inside the Chips Ahoy cookie, you can put all kinds of stuff in there, right? And by the way, I was at the supermarket a couple of years ago, and a woman was buying this product, and so I had to ask her, why are you buying it? And she looked at me like I was a total idiot. She said, "It's a brownie inside a chocolate chip cookie. What is better than that?" So sometimes the point here is sometimes the ideas can be really, really simple, right? So, and now they've done 8 or 10 or different line extensions off of this basic idea of putting a layer inside of the chocolate chip cookie. We definitely undercharged for this project because it's led to a huge successful hundreds of millions of dollar platform for them. I did want to just put a tool in here because I think a lot of you guys use tools, and so we had a project for Craftsman and several projects actually, and this was really fun. I don't know if you know, but the Craftsman ratchets, wrenches, and sockets is like over a $350 million business. It's a huge business, which is why you always see ads during the holidays for these things, because they sell a ton of them. We couldn't figure out how they kept selling them though, because they have these lifetime guarantees, right? Or warranties if you lose or break a tool. But anyway, people buy a lot of these things. And so we did like 25 groups around the country. We were trying to get insights. And it turned out the display of these things were a mess. And we worked with a design agency to redo the entire display to make it more approachable. But one of the techniques we used was simply role play and wishing with different target markets. So you got moms or homeowners, females who want their own set of tools. You got motorcycle guys, you got boat owners, you got tuners. That guy on the left, in the middle left, there's a tuner. The Hispanic community will sometimes create repairing a car, for instance, as a social event in the neighborhood, boat owners, et cetera, et cetera. So with all those insights, it was not difficult to come up with an idea of a motorcycle toolkit, right? Come on, this is not rocket science, right? Or in this case, we realized that new homeowners, could be a nice gift warming thing, right? A gift for under 50 bucks. This one, I wanted to share this one because this is really cool. If you're wishing and you're under the car, right? You're making repairs or down in the basement or whatever, ratcheting stuff up. What's the wish that you have when you look at this? Well, the wish is that you can read the damn size, right? I mean, it's dark under the car. You're trying to fumbling around. You see, is this a 5/8? So what the hell is this thing, right? And so this is not rocket science. And so that led to these laser etch sockets. And this has been a big hit for them. We did this work a bunch of years ago. And the buyer at Sears said, people are not going to pay 10 or 20% more. But to his credit, when he saw the qualitative research, he was behind the glass and saw what we were doing. And people were I don't care if it's 10 or 20% more. I want to be able to see the damn thing. Give me a break. And so, yes, I will pay a premium for that. So he immediately, to his credit, a 180, and they launched them immediately, and it's been a hit for him. So I also wanted to just share two naming experiences, because I don't know about you guys, but naming is really hard. I mean, I think we used to have a naming division, if you will, and we were quoted in the 90s, and we were appearing in all these articles as these naming experts. And I don't want to say we got out of it, because we still help name new products, of course, with our clients, but to have a separate naming division, it's tough. I mean, you can spend all summer and you're kicking the dog and you still can't get it because it's not available. Anyway, I just shared this one because this became famous. This was, we were asked by Pepsi to help them name a new international soft drink. And in this case, this is a drink for men. This was 15 years ago or whenever this was, but I thought it was an interesting example. They wanted a strong name, right? And you can see the Pepsi equity triggers. We used, there's a program called Headliner, and it has 60,000 expressions in it. So we put keywords in that computer program, generate all these expressions, and you don't need the computer program. You can just go online. You can go on cliche websites, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea is you come up with a tagline first, and then use that tagline to generate the names, which is a reverse way to think about it, right? The other trick we'll sometimes use is, to use pictures to come up with names, because you can get trapped in words, right? And not be able to come up with anything. So anyway, this led to Pepsi Max, and and that, live life to the max. And that's been a $500 million brand for them globally. But that was triggered by these expressions, right? That's how we arrived at that. This is on my TEDx talk, but I included it because this one's fun too. We were naming a new strawberry and fudge ice cream for Ben and Jerry's. We only had 30 minutes. It was an all-day session. We're generating novelties for Ben and Jerry's, like instead of bonbons, Ben-Bens, right? Instead of pints, yeah. So what triggers, again, you've got to use triggers to get ideas, right? You can't just say, okay, who's got a name? Because they've been working on this thing for 3 months and couldn't come up with a name. And so we said, could we trigger them with greeting cards? Because they're kind of nice and friendly and fun. Or could we trigger them with children's book? Because they're nice and friendly and fun. And I thought a lot about it and finally came to the conclusion that Ben and Jerry's is very anti-authoritarian. So what I triggered the group with was slang. And I got a bunch of slang dictionaries, cut them up into pieces, and that led to the name Snafu, strawberries naturally all fudged up, which is the name that they launched the flavor under. It's now in the graveyard. These things have their cycles, and but we solved the problem. Okay, so how much time how are we doing here? 6:33. Okay, I got to move it along because I want to make sure I hit these research methodologies. When you're doing classic, research with focus groups, you obviously write a screener. You want to make sure you get the right people in. What are we researching? Where, with whom? How are we testing our ideas? We were testing. We're getting insights for Dr. Scholes, and we wanted athletic people. So we did the groups actually in a gym. And you can be creative about where you research your things, because people will get ideas beyond a sterile environment. And by the way, in the last 6 months, we've been doing virtual focus groups, and they have also worked extremely well, also somewhat to my surprise. And I can tell you more about that if you're interested. But this is a classic, recruiting specifications. Who are you talking to? And you're very specific about these when you have the facility recruit for you. This project, it looks like, was for Hampton Nuts, it looks like. Okay. And this was the one for Dr. Scholes, which is, we were trying to get a sense of what kind of athletes people were, And by the way, the really simple and brilliant invention, one of them, we had a whole bunch of new products, dream walkers and coolers and all that came out of this. But one of the brilliant ideas that I loved, or insights, was that we discovered men don't change their insoles nearly enough. Women change them fairly regularly, but men can wear these insoles for 3 years, and they're ineffective after 6 months. And so one of the, I thought, rather great ideas that came out of it was to create an insole where rubbing on the heel ultimately revealed a note or words below it that said, change me, right? After 6 months. And so that's a really clever idea, right? So you can get men to say, oh, I got to change this. And that can have a huge impact on their business, right? Because it's all about repeat. Yeah. Okay. So, when we do qualitative research, the cool thing is we can bring a lot of our creative approaches and methodologies to research. And I wanted to share those with you. And I shared this one because I mentioned we were in the innovation agency for Thomas's. And so, they had these bagels, right? These mini bagels. By the way, I don't know if you know, but Thomas's is the largest prepackaged bagel maker in the country. And, half the consumers of Thomas's products don't even know that. It blew our minds. They know they did English muffins, but not bagels. Anyway, so we had and so how do you determine which ones do you want to promote? Which is going to be the most successful? And so, but we didn't have a budget for that. So what do? I talked to my daughter, who's now in her 20s. So this was, a bunch of years ago. But I talked to her and I said, can we go to yours? And I went to her school, Rogers Elementary. And so we got, the school to agree to test these products. They had to, the parents had to sign off that they would taste these products and make sure there were no allergies and all the rest. And it didn't cost us anything. We gave a little talk to the kids about creativity. It didn't cost us a dime. And and that led to, it turned out blueberry was the one that the kids wanted most. And so that's the one we pushed. And so that, the point here is this didn't cost us anything, right? The other thing I wanted to say is that ethnography is important, and in my opinion, really important when you do research. So you want to, if you can, if it's possible, see people using your product in the environments they're going to use them. And so we were working on this Prestone car wash and wax product. And so instead of, bringing guys into a focus group, we had to set up cameras outside a facility, recruited guys with dirty cars who washed their own cars, brought them in, had them wash the cars, and we filmed them as they were cleaning. And that led to this product, Prestone. It's sort of 2-in-1. But the point here for you guys is that it's really important, in my opinion, to if you can manage it, to test your products in the environment, because you can learn so much. I was supposed to open it this way. Yeah. Oh, I read it this way. Oh, the directions are on the back. Who knew? Oh, this handle thing on the right. I really like that. And as you know, when you do your new product development, these products are never born, as beautiful adults. They're ugly babies, right? You really got to work them to make sure they're going to, be what consumers ultimately want. And it's an iterative process. And by the way, I would say something else. We're big advocates of testing ugly prototypes. The Dr. Scholl's products, projects, they basically said, hey, we can, 3D print all these concepts that came out of the ideation and test those, and they'll look beautiful. And we said, no, we're going to make them out of cardboard and duct tape. And they're like, what are you talking about? And the reason we did that is because if the prototypes are too finished, people will react and say, oh, I like this color or that color. If it's an ugly prototype, they're really happy to say, oh, I think this should be bigger. And, I'm not sure that's going to give me enough support, et cetera, et cetera. So my recommendation to you inventors is to don't be afraid to test really unfinished, ugly prototypes, because you can learn sometimes a lot more than you can with a finished prototype. This was just a project. We had the idea of square bagels. We did a home use test, which is really great. We didn't tell people anything about it. It turns out consumers told us that this product was a lousy bagel, but a great bread. And so that's why we called this bagel bread. We never would have known that if we had not done this home use test and just sent them the product and said, tell us what you think and when you might use this thing. This became a product of the year, and then it was kind of screwed up, and there were production issues, but anyway, people were saying it's kind of fattening, and so we did mini squares, and then ultimately evolved that even into bagel thins based on that insight. So, and the last projective technique I want to share with you from a research standpoint, this was, we were working with Stroman. That's owned by Bimbo. Bimbo is the largest bakery firm in the nation, in the world. They own Entenmann's, Freihofer, Stroman, Thomas's, Arnold, etc. And you can do projective techniques with people and say, of all these brands around it, which one feels most like Stroman to you? All right. And you see all those, different brands around it. This blew our minds, and this blew the product manager's mind, and this blew the vice president's mind, because people were picking Rolex and Tiffany, and you're going, this is a white bread. What, are you kidding me? They said, no, this is the Tiffany of white bread, or this is the Rolex of white bread. So, sometimes we bring our biases into this research, and when you use these projective techniques, people will tell you things that you could never have gotten at any other way. Collaging is very powerful. We had a project for Procter & Gamble. They own Clairol. They bought Clairol for a new gray hair color product. And so we got women who colored their hair and said, how do you feel before it's colored, meaning it needs to be colored? These are some of the images. I mean, these aren't the exact images, but these are this was the feeling of the images we got from women. And for me as a male, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, look at this. We've got, this woman about to be murdered in the lower left here from, the Psycho movie. I mean, this was like Armageddon, And then we said, well, how do you feel after you color your hair? And it's, running through the fields and oh my gosh, brightness and light. And so it was clear. And one woman, I remember, I'll never forget what we did. I went to her home in Stamford, Connecticut, with somebody from P&G who was coming with me. And, I saw her collage and I said, what's going on? And she said, if I don't feel, she said, if my hair color is not right, I can't help the world. I'm like, what? She said, yeah, I need to feel good about myself in order to give back to the world. And I, talk about an insight, right? So anyway, so that led to the idea of longer lasting gray coverage so people could feel better about themselves for longer periods of time. But the whole point is this research gave us insights we could never have gotten any other way. And visuals are really powerful for doing that. The last thing I want to share with you, because it's so powerful, I think I've shown this game invention to Mary. We use this. This is one of mine. Bright Ideas, a game of inventing, and it's a word combination technique. And this was licensed by the Games Gang, and then they did do it, and then we used it as a promotional tool for our business, etc. Anyway, I did a concept test of this recently because I'm thinking about bringing it back out or even marketing it myself. And this was the concept I wrote. And I used, and you can see it there, it talks about combining words and you get an invention. And the game is this a patented invention or something you just created? And it's a fun game and people get creative when you play it. But what was extraordinary with this IQ service, this 1Q service it's called, we tested this with 200 kind of random consumers, and we put this test out there. It cost us very little money, and we got results from this test in less than 15 minutes. And I'll repeat that. So we got results of this quantitative test in less than 15 minutes. We were able to do that because they have a panel of 1 million people with smartphones. People read the concept, right? And then said, likely to buy, somewhat likely, neither unlikely, top 2 box score, et cetera, et cetera. And these were the results. And so the results were really, really very good. 69% top 2 box was great. But the point was that there's services out there now for very little money where you can get quantitative results for your idea when you've written up a concept and get the results back literally in 15 or 20 minutes. We're working with a company that has a new, it's a superfood and it's a B12 concentrate. And so we did a test with 200 vegetarians around the country. The top 2 box scores were really high. It was great. And they got those results in 40 minutes. And he did that the night before he went into a venture capital funding meeting. And so that's where the technology has brought us now. We can do quantitative testing very inexpensively with very targeted consumers. I mean, you could target consumers who are shopping at a toy store because you can geolocate these things, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Concept development. We really don't have time to I've written, hundreds and hundreds of concepts. And the one thing I would say is don't have your agency write the concept because they're going to try to promote it. They're going to, bagel schmagel. I mean, they're going to try to. No, the purpose of the concept is to explain the idea as simply as you can, and it's not to validate your idea. It's to really learn something, and so you want it to be very simple. This was a concept we did for Oreo. This led to actually this product, so it changed. But the point was the concept should be very, very simple. These were the test results that we AC snapshot, but you can see, these concepts tested through the roof. You almost never get one outstanding, and we were getting three. That first Chips Ahoy one was the Brownie Chips Ahoy, by the way, just so you know. Okay, so the last thing I want to share with you guys is so let's say you have this idea, right? And somebody might say, well, create an elevator speech for it. Okay, all right. But what we do is we do this both in ideation sessions and with clients outside of ideation sessions. It's a way to really crystallize the consumer benefit or customer benefit of your idea. We did this came up because Unilever had asked us to help their scientists do a better job of communicating their ideas to marketing. So there was a lot of different things we tried, but this turned out to be the most easy and most successful. We call it the billboard technique. And you just create a billboard for your idea. So the way you do it is you obviously you have a name for your idea, your invention. You list the benefits of the idea. So you have to know who your target market might be and what are the benefits to that target market. You pick the most important one, which is hard, but you have to pick one. You put that in a headline. Then what's a visual? If you're driving along I-95, right? If you look at a billboard, it's usually got a headline, a visual, and then maybe a call to action or a reason to believe below, right? And if you do this with your concepts, your inventions, I think you'll discover that it's a really profoundly simple but potentially powerful way to make sure that you really crystallize your idea to what the major benefit is. And of course, Bounty, the quicker picker-upper, the visual is typically a spill, and then the reason to believe could be what, like micro thirst pockets or something. I wrote an article about this particular technique for Fast Company magazine, and that's the link there. Again, so all these links are in the thing I want to share. We'll go to questions now, but I just want you to see these resources too. All this stuff is free. Different articles on creativity, next generation brainstorming techniques, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's good stuff, right? And then these are my books. There are two more now, but like this is one that just came out, but whatever. So that's where we're at. It's 6:49. So I have about 10 minutes with you guys. I want to pause now and see if you have any specific questions. And again, Doug, you're able to send this to people if they want, or I can send it, right?
That's right. We've recorded this. I'll take out the introductory remarks so people don't have their faces on the recording. But then what we'll do is we'll post that onto the IACT website along with a SlideShare version of your slides, so that people can click on the links and have access to all of the details in case they want to go. Because that was a lot of information, and
I know.
You went like lightning fast, but it kept things moving, so that was good.
Yeah, I apologize. I always
don't be silly. It's great.
But
that was great.
But hopefully some of you wrote down a question or two that I can give you the.
You know what has happened here is we got a couple of chats. I think what I'll do is I'll read off the chats to you so that we can keep things short, because I know you only have about 10 minutes. If anybody has a question, just put it into the chat and I'll read it off, or you can read it.
Great.
Any questions in the chats here? No? All right. Maybe you just want to unmute yourself and ask a question then?
Yeah, hi, Doug. I'd be interested in a name of one or two of the companies that do quantitative research with response via cell phones.
Yeah, the best one that we know of, and it's in this deck, is 1Q, and because they're cheap and they're quick and they're good, and so that contact information is here. Let's see. We'll go back here. Sorry, where is this? Oh, there it is. Lori Klein is a friend of mine. She's now moved to Texas, but she's the contact. That's her telephone number. You can call her, and these are relatively inexpensive. I think the guy who did the vegetarian research, I think it was like $1,400 for the 200 people, but that was special, so it might be less than that, if you have just a more general target market. But yeah, and you get your full report 40 minutes later. It's unbelievable, and you can use it, for presentations.
So the next one is, which industries are most open to outside ideas? And that came in from Mark. It's in the chat.
Yeah, I think some of the inventors online here would be better able to answer that than I could. Certainly we know in our world that everybody is open to our consulting work. So in some sense, they're all open to ideas. In terms of what industries, obviously Mary would know about games and toys. The conventional ones are obviously household products. Sometimes in the world of novelties and promotions, certainly home products, household products. All the kitchens. I mean, all that's garden supply stuff. All the sort of packaging ideas, tools, display ideas. The things that you guys would know better than I in some ways.
Well, let's move on because we don't have much time.
Okay.
Charles asks, do you always test the idea or name before marketing it?
That is a great question. Sometimes you just go with it because of time. We'll have a name, and to answer your question, the answer is no. We don't always test stuff. And another way to think of that is that the way to really succeed at this work is not to test it once, but to do it iteratively. So you get an idea, you go show it to people, you get feedback, you redo it, you show it again, you show it again, you show it again. So this iterative process, you do that 2 or 3 or 4 times. By the time you get to the 2 or 3rd or 4th time, people start saying, yeah, I want that. That's great. I love it. And you get this consensus, and you really got something. But it requires openness at each stage of the journey to the learning. So you're not saying, tell me why you like this. You're saying, what do you think? But the short answer is no, we do not always test it. And you can get in trouble that way.
Sure. Here's another question, a follow-up from Charles. When do you know when to pull the plug or go full steam ahead with marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question too. It's, on the research, on the qualitative side, the thing is we begin to know in our gut that we really got something, because people get excited. I remember when we were testing Hardy Grain's English muffins, you could just tell that the consumer is saying, where can I buy this thing? And you can even ask them a question, would you take your incentive money? We have some outside, would you pay to buy those? And they say, absolutely, where can I get this thing? So people become excited about it. So in your gut, you really got something. And then of course, if you have to build a factory or, there's a major commitment by the company, then you want to validate that with quantitative testing. But, if you're iterative about it, you get to the point where you really know in your gut, that you really got something.
John Ash asks, can you tell of an experience when production or technical problems drove a good idea into the ground?
Let's see, when it drove, well, one of the things I'll answer that 2 ways. I'll answer it both negatively and positively. We were, and forgive me for these English muffin examples, but because we have a lot more, but they're top of mind because we've been talking about it. We tested a corn English muffin, and oh my God, consumers were like, this is the best thing I ever tasted. And the smell of it was extraordinary. And we said, oh, we got a big hit here. And it failed in the marketplace. Why? Because the quote lab samples were different than the production samples. And so you have to be very, very careful. And so we ultimately relaunched that several years after its failure when we were aware of that, and it became a success. the other thing I would say is when my business partner, Gary Fraser, did Mentadent, which became a $250 million brand for Unilever, the toothpaste, they couldn't figure out how to manufacture this thing. And what they did was they went to the guys on the line and said, can you help us solve the problems? And it was the guys on the line who came up with, not the engineers, it was the guys on the line who figured out how to solve the manufacturing problem.
So that was the pump that you hold down and it comes out in two pieces?
It was, yes. And the problem was
I love that stuff. Whatever happened to that?
Well, it was bought, Unilever got out of that toothpaste business, sold it to Church and Dwight, and Church and Dwight bought it because of baking soda, and they didn't do anything. They killed the product, and so they killed Gary's Baby. It's a fantastic product, and you know, but from a manufacturing standpoint, they couldn't get the bottom of it to nestle in, and so they used this sort of vibrational little by little is how the engineers solved that problem.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's see if there's any more questions. I think we should wrap things up because you're out of time. It's 6:57. Let's. I hope everyone will join me in thanking the speaker. Brian, that was great. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. And I was serious about.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I want to make one more announcement. On the 31st of August, we're going to have a partner in Carlson, from Carlson, Gasky, and Olds. His name is Ten Old, and he's going to present patent issues with knockoffs. I know we all are very concerned about the knockoffs. They seem to erode our ability to produce and get onto Amazon because the knockoffs keep popping up like whack-a-moles, and we can't get them to take them down fast enough.
Hey, Doug, I did just want to reiterate my contact info is there. If anybody has any questions about anything, I realize this was a fire hose tonight. I'm more than happy to talk to them and help them if I can.
That's terrific. I'm going to let you go because I know you're
Okay.
on a short fuse.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Good seeing you, Mary and team.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all.
Very interesting.
Yeah.